The tips and technology stuff that we're doing. My name's Kevin Leech. I am an applications engineer for BWIR. We're going to talk today, before I get there, just make sure everybody gets telephone or mic access. You're muted anyway, so it's not a big deal. As you can see my screen, if you're having problems seeing visual, send me a quick email or a message down the bottom there. Who we are, I'm a PTC certified trainer. I work for BWIR. We PTC Solutions, Windshield, Creo, MathCAD, and Arbortext. We help with migration and integration services. We have support. We have training, certified training centers across the country, from Kansas City to Arlington, Charlotte, Cinnaminson, New Jersey, Orlando, Florida. You can get to our training website, or if you have any kind of questions about training at the end, we can send you the information needed. The webinar today we're going to talk about is interactive surface design, ISDX, for using Creo Parametric 2. So it's the style surface modeling process. We're going to talk a little bit about the concepts of using the style tool. Create some initial style curves, develop style surface models, integrate style with parametric features, use techniques for creating common detail shapes. So part of the issue is it's not an all or nothing kind of tool. It's a tool that you can use with your solid modeling or with just regular surface modeling, right? You can use it as a feature built into one of those, or you can design the whole model from it. Freeform surface modeling is used for shapes with high curvature, sculptured shapes. A couple examples down the bottom. You can bring in JPEGs and use them as traced curves. Talk a little bit about that. We'll see where they moved it to in Creo. So this is, again, the Creo Parametric 2.0. Two different surface modeling paradigms, right? So the regular basic surface model is one paradigm, and then it's dimensionally controlled. It's for engineering type features. Then you have freeform surface modeling. It's more driven by intuition and feel, right? Aesthetics. It looks good. It feels good. It's one of those that, a lot of commercial type products that you're building, that you're holding in your hand are got to be smooth and comfortable and feel more so than a certain size or shape. It doesn't mean, though, that you can't use some of that parametric ability in your freeform surface modeling. And actually, I got a couple examples set up today to kind of go through where I'm going to use some of that parametric stuff with it as well. Style curves are splines that are interactively drawn and shaped with the style tool. So you're gonna have control of whether it's going to be on a plane or free curve, points, the end point controls, right? Curve on surface. These are just types of curves that you build. Once you build the curves, then you're going to build the surfaces against those curves, just more or less like a boundary blend type deal. Boundary surfaces. You have loft surfaces. You have blend surfaces. Through a bunch of these. Can be used with parametric, so these are just add-on features in a regular type model used to replace type surfaces or thickening a shape or do a replace functionality. All the same tools basically you can use in either freeform surfacing or in the regular surface model. I'll do a couple bulges. I'll do a quick example of a bulge, how that works. All right, so let's get out of here and stop playing around. So first thing, it is Creo Parametric 2.0. I've changed my background color just so I can see it a little bit easier. It's the white background is a little tough on my eyes. Basically, it's in File Options, System Colors, and you can always change the background to a default and go back to the white. I like the dark background. I'm an old Pro E user. I've been doing it for a long time. It's just what I'm most comfortable with. Like I said, I've got some stuff set up here that I was going to work through. And the first one is let's build a little cover here, right? So this is going to be just a cover model at the end. And I got a couple things. I'm going to delete that one. I got a couple things already pre-built. I built a simple sketch with some parametric dimensions, and I'm going to connect my surfaces to these almost like a skeleton deal where I can control the shape of my model through the length of this. And I have another sketch down the bottom that maybe I've got some special dimensions in here that I'm pulling from an assembly that I know that I got to keep a, maybe this cover's got to fit over some bosses and I know that they're a certain distance apart. I can put them in as a sketch and then bring them to life afterwards. So the style tool is up here in the top right. Starts, as soon as it starts, you know you're kind of in style because first of all, it would tell you, if you don't have the license and you click on the style tool, it will say, please go see your PTC salesperson, blah, blah, blah. If it goes right into the feature, that means you have the license already. There are some differences in here, like we can do things like I can look at this in multiple views at the same time if I want to. Sometimes that's helpful, and it's just a right click, hold it down to show the views or not show the views. Orient to the active plane, it's another right click. I can say activate plane orientation. If I want to change the orientation, right now if I draw a curve, it's going to be on this datum or it's going to be free based on that. I can always change that by saying set active plane, pick a different plane. I'll do one more thing before I go into that style tool though. I want to add a datum. It's going to go through this line again because that's part of that parametric sketch. I want to kind of drive some of the shape. So I'm going to say plane, through the edge, control, up the datum and make that parallel. This way if my sketch changes, my datum will go with it. I'm going to tie one of my internal curves when I get into the style tool to that datum. All right, so let's go ahead and play around here. So we're going to start this style tool. It selected the top plane as my active plane, which is good because that's kind of where I wanted to start. I want to draw a curve. I want it to be sitting right on top of that plane, and I want it to be a planar curve, right? So this icon here tells me that this curve is going to lay flat on this plane. So then I'm going to just start sketching it. If you notice, when I get up close to these edges and I use my shift button, it will grab a pre-existing geometry, right? So I'm going to grab it on the endpoint. Go, hit my shift again, grab it on the endpoint. Go, shift again, hit, grab it on the endpoint. I've just drawn a curve connected to those 3 points based off my skeleton, basically. I'm going to go look at active plane orientation. We're going to edit the definition of this sketch because I want to control the ends a little bit. So edit definition, pick the point. And this is just a how does it control to the tangency kind of deal. I can also right-click right on the tangency handle and say I want to be normal to a plane. The other one, normal to a plane. So there's my first sketch. You can see I got a little more control, and again, it's very, static. I'm kind of pulling things and dragging things, so I kind of get a different feel here. That's the first curve. The nice thing about the style tool is it's going to start adding those curves up in this little tree, and then when I'm finished with my surface and everything, it'll be one feature, as opposed to what you would normally see in a surface model where you might have 4 or 5 curves, a boundary blend, another one. So it kind of cleans this whole model tree up as well as it's going. So I'm going to have another curve here. So we're going to say curve. It's not going to sit on this same surface. I'm actually going to offset it up 8. You can see how my active plane moved up. I want to sketch this curve, so I'm going to look at the active plane orientation. My shift button. I'm just going to grab onto that. This. Hit the definition. Snap it right to the datum plane in the middle. I'm just checking my conditions here, right? So if it's pulling off, then I want to make sure it grabs on. And again, I want to control my endpoint. So in this case, I'm going to right click on it and say normal to the front datum plane. A bit easier to see when I there's my top curve, there's my bottom curve, two curves. I want to create another one along the back on both sides to kind of give me my four sides here. And so we're going to have to switch the active plane. I want to say set active plane, not active plane orientation. Set the active plane to front in orientation, and in this case we can start the curve. If your datum's getting in the way, or if it gets a little too ugly, you can turn some of that off, makes it a little bit easier to pick. And even this, sometimes it's easier to be not oriented to the plane. Be careful, you see what happened there. I got that offset still inside here, so I'm going to do that one more time. At the curve, make sure my reference is back to 0. I don't want to be offset off that. I want to be right on that. Drawing a curve, those two. Endpoint, and in this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this to be draft tangent to the top datum. And I'm going to set the top, the horizontal, so it's going to come in nice and clean. Curve. The curve on this backside. And checking to make sure I got references of 0. Sometimes it's hard to grab, so I'll separate them, and you notice I just kind of drag that up a little bit, then right click on it, and get my draft tangent, top again, 3. And however I want to control the top of this, maybe I just want to leave it, maybe I want it to be more free form, right? So let's just, let's go horizontal to start with. I can always change that later. So I'm adding curves, now I want to add a surface. Start the surface tool. Inside the feature, right? So this is still all within one feature now. At the bottom, use the control button, control, control. So I get all 4 of them. That's my normal icon, so as long as I'm normal there, because when I mirror this to the other side, I want a nice clean surface when I'm done, so I want to make sure that's all nice and normal. There's my surface. Finish the feature, and you can see all of that is now built within that one feature called style. Grab the surface, just like in normal surface modeling now, and do a mirror. The front datum, mirror around it, one surface, control pick the second, merge them together. And so now we got a nice surface started here. Maybe I want to thicken it. There's my solid. I told you I put in this original sketch here to kind of set up my holes. Maybe this thing has to fit over those holes. So because it's a solid, I can do the extrude tool, remove material through all. Done. So now this cover I know will fit over the top of whatever those posts were. And it'll allow me to kind of manipulate this a little bit. Maybe I want to go in and add some control to the side of this, or lengthen it, right? So if I took the original sketch here, not that one, the first sketch, that edit, change this overall dimension to 55, what'll happen is you'll see the sketch and the surface updates, because that's parametric. It's tied to that sketch. Back into the style tool, edit the definition. Like I said, maybe I want to add some side control on this, and that's kind of why I put that extra datum in. I wanted to specifically be able to use that datum. So, set active plane back to the datum. I'm going to build the curve. Make sure I have 0 as an offset. Like the other one where I kind of goofed it up. Here's my curve. Maybe instead of just changing the control, maybe I want to add some more points there. At an midpoint, let's add another point, maybe another point. That on from the side, standard plane orientation, right? So right now we have this big bubble, but I want to tie it to this shape. Make this go, oh. And this one, just like the other one, we're going to take and make this draft tangent up. I can go back to my original surface. The nice part about the history of this is it's automatically above that surface. All I got to do is go back in, edit the definition, right-click, say internal collector, and grab that other surface. And you can see how automatically it grabbed and updated that surface. If I went all the way out, well, if it updated one surface, it updated both surfaces. Back in, definition, back find that curve again, and like I said, a very free-forming kind of deal where I can kind of pull and push to get a feel for what that's going to look like. Like it. There's my surface. I can go back after because I've made it solid. I can go back here afterwards, hide all this excess, add some rounds. Rounds. And of course I can go in and check my surface because that's really my ultimate goal, was to make this all nice and pretty. So I want to go back to analysis, a reflection tool, got my two surfaces, and you can see how nice that surface looks. Okay. Nice clean surface. They give me a nice mold part. And again, it's driven parametrically by that original skeleton. At least parts of it are. The overall, maybe it's those main couple dimensions you really need to control. Maybe it's the whole pattern you really need to control. From a top-level assembly, you want to manipulate it. It's just a great way to kind of work. Model tree doesn't look bad. Everything's kind of built into the style. Save my models. Assemble it up to whatever I want to assemble to. And I don't have anything to really assemble this onto, but if I was assembling that part into place, now I could always go in here and activate it, and I can manipulate some of this in the assembly. So if I wanted to go in, maybe it's got to fit over the top of something, right? We can go in here and say, let's look at the items, that active plane to the plane application. So maybe it's looking at that, through a hidden line where I can see through the part and then look at the, underneath cover. Maybe it needs a little more clearance. I can just kind of pick on this, drag it out a little bit. That's kind of the first example right there of just taking a model and kind of going from the design from the beginning to the end and building on to what I'm doing. And again, it's a simple, I didn't make it overly complicated. I made a pretty simple deal where I just have a couple of simple curves. If I wanted to add more curves in here, I could add those curves, add them as ribs, basically, to control, more control points. A lot of control inside that feature. Right? First example. A couple more little examples in here. One is of, I just kind of made some simple surface parts, but basically if this was a big cover or something and you want to put a dimple down inside of this, this is how you kind of go about doing it, right? So I got a simple sketch down here, two circles. I'm going to project them up, the big one on top, the little one onto this one, and then I'm going to connect and make a bulge out of the whole thing. So this would keep me a nice offsetted surface, nice curved surface on the top, which is a simple curve with an extrude, nothing too fancy. So this would be a piece of the cover. It wouldn't be, obviously this is kind of simplified to make it a little bit easier to see. Dot the style tool. The first thing I want to do is bring these curves up. Drop curve, make both sides of the circle, pick the surface I want to control to, and done. The same thing with the little curve underneath here. So this other circle on this one. I want to then use those curves to edit or to trim the surface. I'm going to put a hole in the top, and then I'm going to keep the bottom. So we're going to go in here and do surface trim. Grab the surface that we're going to trim to. Grab the curve we're going to trim from. Both sides. This to get rid of the patch that I want to get rid of. So I want to keep the outside here, get rid of the inside. Okay. I want to do the opposite. I got this big surface below, but I only want to keep this one little chunk here. Again, surface trim. Grab the surface. Always use your right click too if you want to use your right mouse to get there quicker. Right? Same thing. Pick one, pick the other. Click again, delete collector. I want to keep the inside, so I'm going to delete the outside. Two surfaces. Now I'm going to create some curves to make a boundary out of this. I'm going to turn my datums on here. See what I got going on. We're going to set active plane to the front, the plane orientation. Now I'm going to build a curve from this to this. Just to the two white edges there. It's going to be a simple planar curve on the center reference there. Shift button on the bottom, shift button on the top. Change my control. This one I want to make a little bit special. I want to make this surface curvature. Top and bottom. One curve. Do the same thing on the other side. Gives me a nice blend through there. Curve from the bottom to here. Now we're going to build the surfaces inside here. So surface, one, control, control, control. One surface. Surface, control, control. The second surface. And I leave. It does all the other work for me. Clean up my sketch here. Hide that. The style second because I'm gonna thicken this first. Grab the surface. See, it's already merged together. Again. Done. Hide the style. Hide the offset. There's my dimple. And again, it's based on the offset. So if this offset changes, you're going to see that change as well. Check. Analysis. Go into our curvature analysis. Tool here. I got gray picked it already. Nice and smooth. It's a nice clean surface. It's based on the two curves. It's a great way to kind of. It didn't add 50 features to my model tree. On top of all that, it's going to keep it nice and clean and make my life a little bit easier. A couple more little quick examples, real world kind of stuff. We have this motorcycle tire, and we need to build a couple things. We're going to build a fender part. So I have a simple fender part that's built in with just some imported stuff to kind of look at it. And then I'm going to build a rim part or a wheel part with the spokes. So we're going to do the fender first. All I did here was I imported half of that, so it's just something to kind of see. I'm going to get this stuff out. We're going to make a fender. So we're going to go into the style tool. A set. There. I set front as the active plane. Start by building one curve. Again, it's going to be curve. Inner curve, free, 0. It's going to look something like this is kind of where that trace sketch would kind of come into play. If you had a JPEG of the Fender, you know, maybe you saw some artist rendering of it, you wanted to kind of sneak that in, you could put that on this datum plane and then use the curve and just trace the curve on there. This is my first curve. I'm going to build a second curve. We're going to change this so it's going to be kind of a intersecting curve to this. Intersect right datum. All right. So that active plane to the right datum. The curve. Yeah. Normal. Again, this is one of those things that it's going to be normal to one of those things that I know because I'm going to build the second half of this that I want to make sure I keep normal to that surface, right? Otherwise, it's going to give me a weird point there, a bad blend spot. The active orientation. One more. What that noise is in the background, but I'm getting kind of a feedback there. I hope it's not everybody. All right, so there's my two curves. I'm going to use those two curves to build a surface along that, basically that trajectory. Surface. I'm going to use a cross collector. Here's the surface. Looks a little bit big. Right, so I'm going to build another curve along this to kind of clean this up a little bit. I'm going to go in here and say set active plane, back to the front datum, active plane orientation. I'm going to build a curve. It's going to kind of come across this. And then I'm going to use that curve to drop onto the surface and then clean off the top curve, that surface. And I'm going to use the surface trim, curve collector right there, collect at the bottom. See how my fancy little fender is getting created. Take the whole thing, mirror it to the other side, put them together. Them. One, two, and hide them. I can do my surface analysis. A pretty good one. I can go back and clean that up a little bit. Here's my fender at the assembly level. So that was step one. The second step of this little exercise I wanted to do was to build some spokes in there in my wheel. So, you know, when you think of something like spokes, you wouldn't necessarily think of style off the bat. You might think of solid modeling and trying to model all this, mill things away and do all kinds of stuff, but there's a nice, easy way to do this. Set active plane, grab the front surface. And I'm going to start by building 4 curves. I'm just going to start off pretty simple. Nothing real special here. I'm going to use these 4 curves I'm putting in to build a surface. Then I'm going to take the surface and thicken it. Drag these around a little bit. Maybe I want to add a midpoint. All of them. Curve it. I might want to offset. Right now they're all sitting on the same datum plane, so maybe I want to take this one and say I want to make this a +5. So it's going to move it over in one direction, then take the next one, make this one maybe a -5. So what started off as 4 simple curves in a row, now I've gotten kind of a little offset there. We can look at them, right? We're going to go back in, we're going to build a surface out of those. So edit definition, back in, start the surface tool, pick 1, 2, 3, and 4. Surface. That surface, thicken it. On the middle here. Using my surface dead center of the thicken. This revolve right here is a cut, so if I take that cut and put it after the thicken, well, it's going to clean up a little excess here. Add my style to get rid of my curves. Here's my trim. Take that thicken style, group them and pattern them. Make this a axis pattern. Trim, modeling, view, get back to the view. There's my motorcycle. Front rim and fender all kind of coming together. Pretty nice looking in my mind. Quick, efficient. It takes advantage of a lot of the built-in Pro-E stuff. Some things don't necessarily have to be perfectly parametric. Some things have to be, you know, I got to see it. It's got to look right. It's got to feel right. I'm still not done in there. I'd have to go put rounds on stuff and kind of build it up. I might have to change some of the curves. Might have to be a little bit bigger or smaller. You kind of get the point that you can get a really good idea of how something's going to look pretty fast. And that's pretty much what I was planning on covering today. Save this up. So if you guys have any further questions or you want to send me some emails, obviously my email's here. I see Bobby's out here. Bobby I kind of know from an earlier conversation. I know I talked to him a little bit about it. I was just going to kind of cover overall stuff, but if you guys have more detailed type information that you're trying to get to, just follow up with some emails, and it'll kind of bring everything together there. I had to show as much as I could in the time that we have, and that's kind of the whole deal there. All right, I'm going to take a look here real quick, see if there's any quick questions. Anybody got anything they want to just throw out there and see if I can answer while we're here, or something I did you want to see again? All right, I'd like to thank you guys for coming, and good luck. I hope you got this, the tool, and if not, reach out to us and we'll try to hook you up. Thank you very much for coming.